to chair. I am very happy to chair this session. This is a session on sustainable mobility challenges for the transition targets, and we are going to have a 6 presentation. I think it makes perhaps sense to first have all the presentations and then have questions after the presentations. If there's any pressing questions right after each talk, we can perhaps, if it's clarifying and pressing, we can perhaps devote, a couple of minutes towards the end of the presentation to answer those questions. So according to the program, Amela should start, Amela Ajanovic. So Amela hasn't been able to connect yet. So perhaps I suggest if we agree to reverse the order of the 2 presentations, if it's fine with you, and to start with Mariarosa Baroni, would this be okay? And then while we wait for Amela to connect, is this okay? So Mariarosa Baroni is the president, and
Can you unmute my microphone? Thank you very much. And well, I just want to say a few words. I'm president of NGV Italy and also of the World Gas Council Association. And we are promoting neutral fuels, clean fuels for transportation. That means that we go from natural gas to biomethane to hydromethane, going to a transition, ecological transition to hydrogen. So I would like to ask to start with my presentation, and then we can go through.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hello?
This.
Hello?
Hello, can you go ahead with my presentation, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. No, I'm not.
Yeah. Can you wait, please? Okay.
Okay.
Great, we can now see.
So here you see that we are very active. Italy is probably the first country that started with natural gas. At the beginning was LPG, then we went to CNG, and then finally biomethane. I'm going to show the alternative fuel demand in Europe, the position of our association, and the hydrogen blending and production. So if you can move my slides to number 2. And number 3, thank you very much. So here is, we represent the Italian industries. In my board, we have SNAM, Mobility, we have Iveco, we have the leading components of CNG, LNG, and now also hydrogen.
Okay.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I guess we should perhaps mute Amela. Well,
Mariarosa, I'm not.
But I think we should mute because otherwise,
yes,
it does a bit of there's a bit of background noise.
So okay, yeah. We are engaged in upstream and midstream activities, engine design. I think that Italian technology is the leading in the world for this kind of business. We have OEM production. I can say that FCH, Fiat, at that time was Fiat Iveco, they were the first one to start the production inside for cars and trucks on natural gas. And I was very proud to be part of that project. So we have retail stations, fleet ownership, and now we are very active with biomethane and hydrogen, because we believe that the future of our sector will be eco-fuels. And by eco-fuels, in our case, we are talking about biomethane and hydromethane. So we promote, as I say, the decarbonization of transport. We are very active, not only at the Italian government, but also at the European Commission Union. Can we have the second slide, please? So this is the World Gas Mobility Association. It's quite important to understand why we started this new association a year ago, and we have already main stakeholders part of this association. Stakeholders are India, stakeholders are Nigeria. We have a few European NGV represented in the World Gas Association. We have Japan. We have now several African countries that are looking to not only to LPG as before, but to CNG, LNG, and to biomethane. They are asking for feasibility studies for biomethane, and that is a very good sign for the ecosystem of the world. So we represent the interest of the stakeholders, and we promote the link and the sharing of technology and communication. So everybody is welcome to be part of this mobility association that is really neutral. We go from LPG now also for some African countries to hydrogen at the end. So can we have the other? Thank you. So still, this is what we provide with the World Gas Association, and who is going to be interested, we can send the bylaws to look at after more in detail. It's open to everybody that understand that outside of Europe, natural gas and biomethane is still very strong and very important for countries that are starting now to look to eco mobility. And that should give also to Europe the idea that outside of Europe, natural gas natural gas and biofuels are going to be very important. And that means that, for example, endothermic engines that will be prohibited after 35 in Europe will keep going on outside of Europe. And that's a very strong sign also to our union to show that we cannot just believe that our, for example, transport companies and our goods will still be competitive with countries outside of Europe, because transport is it's a very strong part of the cost of anything that moves. So that's something very important. Can we go on? Thank you. So this is the alternative fuel demand in Europe. Thank you for the next slide. Europe, it's the total fuel demand for transport. You can see that now gasoline, diesel, kerosene is really the largest part of fuel used by mobility. Then you can see that we have a significant part of what we call liquefied petroleum gas. And you see that instead there are fuel and energy that are very, very, very present in a very, very small part of it. You can also see the different years and the movement and of this sharing of the demand for transport. And we think that for the moment will be very difficult to cancel or to go over what is using gasoline and diesel and kerosene. So the transition will not be so easy and so fast as the Europe is asking for. But that I think that my friend Manso will be more explanatory about that. Can I go Can we go ahead? So these are the strategy based on technology neutrality. We wanted to give a fair contribution to see the strategy and to see how the different energy can be used and can be appropriate to mobility. As I say, in NGV, we have all the energy. We have electric, our stakeholders are busy with electricity, with hydrogen, with natural gas, with biomethane. So this is something we went through with our people to show what they think about the technology neutrality and the effort that they can help, how they can help in the eco transition. We see that, for example, the fuel electric can be used in several sets, but not always. There are places and occasions where the most rational, I think, economical and ready energy is still the natural gas. We see here that natural gas and biomethane, LNG, is going to have really the best possibility for transport in the future. Can we go ahead? So these are the demand implementation that we have in Europe. You can see the different countries and the position where we are, all of us. Some are very, very, very low. So as long as Europe should have a transport system that can apply all over, from Portugal to Romania or to Sweden and to Sicily, I say, is still a long way to go, because we need to have sources and infrastructure that cover the entire Europe. And I think this is a very, very sad and difficult point that we have to look at in order to fulfill for 55 and at the end to 235 and 240 and 250. We have to work, Europe has to work very hard to have these curves right. May we go ahead? So these are the stations that we have in network. We have 4,000 CNG stations, but there are going to be 10,000 by 2030. In Italy, they keep, especially SNAM, they keep opening CNG stations. So this would be the number needed if we really want to cover the entire fleet and the entire transport. But at the moment, we already have a very good network. So this to have the possibility to travel all over Europe just on CNG. Can we go ahead? And these are the LNG. LNG is very important for heavy duty. And I think that heavy duty is the one that's going to benefit mostly about the LNG fuel, and because they can cover long distance. They can have a very, very clean, let's say, output and be eco. Right now, especially in Italy, many big suppliers like Barilla, like Amazon, and so on, they decide to go on CNG and LNG to show their customers that they are looking to ecology, and also the transport of their goods is going to be eco-fuel. So the LNG stations are going on. No, go ahead. This is the potential emission. That's very important. And I would like for you to look at for the reduction thanks to biomethane by 230. Right now, we have 1,500,000 vehicles fueled by biomethane, and biomethane, 70% is bio. And we just with that, at the moment, we reach minus 40% CO2 emission. So in 2030, we are thinking about 13 million of vehicle fueled by biomethane, and we could really save a lot of CO2 emission, minus 55%. But we have to also look at that driving on methane and biomethane, we are really helping also the pollution. We are always talking about emission, about the green gas emission, but we never, not anymore. We talk about the fact that the bad emissions can be very important for health, and especially in countries like Italy, where there is not much Lombardia, where there is not much ventilation. So CNG and LNG and bio are going to be extremely important also for emissions, not only gas. Sarah, thank you very much. For the next one. This is what the demand of biomethane is increasing, and by 2030 will be even more. So there are many areas where they have decided to incentivize the biomethane transport and biomethane production, and that's the map of what we need today and what we are going to need by 2030 if we really want to be have an eco transition to an eco transport system. Thank you. So this is the biomethane production, and this is the number of bio-LNG plants and bio-LNG production capacity by 2024. We see that we can really grow up a lot, and we can do a very, very good job in producing biomethane. And with this volume, we could fill up about 25,000 LNG trucks. And that means a lot of CO2 saved all around Europe. So, and this is the potential increase in production in Europe. You can see that the curve can go very up. As I mentioned before, there are new plants for biomethane and also new systems, very modern, that are helping the production of biomethane to be faster and cleaner, and so also less expensive. And that is very important. What we need is to have the confirmation that the European Commission keeps the biomethane as a clean fuel for the future direction. So, thank you. Then we are going to look to the blend of hydrogen. We are testing with ISO an engine with 60% of hydrogen and 40% of natural gas. The result is extremely important, because we found absolutely no problem driving with 60% of hydrogen for our engines. Engines are perfectly idoneous to this share of hydrogen. What we have to look, and we are starting together with the production, with the manufacturers, it's the cylinder. We have to look at cylinder because, as you know, hydrogen has a very high pressure, and we have to be sure that nothing happened, because safety, it's what we think is most important for everybody, and not only in Italy, but all over. So NGV is chair of all the ISO that are testing and the possibility to increase the share of hydrogen into natural gas. And once the ISO will be completed, we will present it to the European Commission for approval. Thank you. So this is the position paper, as we call, for this, what just mentioned, for the possibility to increase the share of hydrogen in natural gas. Of course, the result of CO2 saving will be extremely high. And we are trying also to look to have a cost affordable for the future. I can also anticipate one thing, that right now in Italy, we have more than 30% of fuel delivered into mobility that is bio. Almost 40% it's in the grid. So I could say that the mobility by gas in Italy, it's really going up to a very high point of being very clean and to reach the zero emission when we will be all biomethane. Thank you. So I hope I was inside the time given to me, and I'm ready for any question. I thank you, the organizer, and I will be looking for eventual questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Mariarosa, for the very insightful presentation, in particular on CNG and LNG as, you know, an important tool to achieve carbon neutrality and to achieve the European objectives for 2050. I guess we can now move to Amela Ajanovic, whom I thank for being here. Amela is an engineer and an economist, and she's a professor of energy economics at TU Vienna. So I guess if we manage to stay in the 10 to 12 minutes per presentation, we are well on time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will share my slides. Just a moment.
Yeah, we can now see the slides.
Sorry for the technical issue that I have had this day. Okay.
It happens.
It's my great pleasure to be here with you, and today I will talk about sustainability of electric vehicles. In my presentation, I will start with short introduction, then I will discuss European policy targets for the future, which are related to the use of electric vehicles. I will also discuss the recent developments and challenges, and I will discuss some sustainability issues related to battery electric vehicles. And finally, I will close my presentation with the major conclusions. As you already know, the transport sector is almost completely based on fossil fuels, mostly gasoline and diesel. This is the least diversified sector. And here in the most of the countries and regions, we have a huge energy import dependency. In the EU, transport is responsible for about 1/4 of the total greenhouse gas emissions. But the problem is that in opposite to all other energy sectors where we have stable, even decreasing emissions over time, in the transport sector, we have almost continuously increasing emissions. Some decrease we have had due to the financial crisis and due to the COVID crisis, but basically these emissions are increasing over time. And one important goal of European policies is to find a way how to reduce these emissions. In Europe, we have a broad portfolio of policies which are implemented on the local, national, as well as EU level. And here you can see some European targets for the future. One of the targets is to reduce average CO2 emissions from the new passenger cars. The latest target was 95 grams CO2 per kilometer driven, and already now we have set more ambitious targets for 2025 and 2030. Then in the scope of the climate and energy framework for 2030, the goal is to have at least 40% share of renewable energy in the transport sector. In addition, there is also European Green Deal. According to this document, the goal is to make European Union climate neutral by 2050. And in scope of this document is also sustainable and smart mobility strategy. According to this strategy, we should have at least 30 million zero-emission cars on the European road by 2030. And by 2050, all road vehicles, not just cars, but also vans, buses, as well as heavy-duty vehicles, should be zero-emission vehicles. And this is in line with the transport white paper. According to this document, we should remove internal combustion engine vehicles from urban areas. And this is already happening. Many cities have introduced so-called low carbon zones or zero emission zones. In addition, some countries have also announced ban of internal combustion vehicle sales in the future. And the first country which will start with this strategy is Norway. Starting from 2025, it will not be possible to make registration of conventional vehicles in Norway, and many other countries will follow this example in the next years. Also in the EU, starting from 2035, we will start with the ban of internal combustion engine vehicle sales. So if we are not using internal combustion engine vehicles, then we should use so-called zero-emission vehicles. What are zero-emission vehicles? Basically, we have two types of zero-emission vehicles: battery electric vehicles and fuel cells vehicles. In the case of battery electric vehicles, we are charging electricity direct, but we are charging battery direct with the electricity. And in the case of the fuel cells vehicles, we are charging battery with electricity, which is produced on board in fuel cell using hydrogen. Both types of vehicles have zero emissions at the point of use, but they also have some other advantages as well as disadvantages. The most important advantages of zero emission vehicles is a higher energy efficiency in comparison to conventional vehicles. They can also help us to increase energy supply security, since both electricity as well as hydrogen could be produced from different primary energy sources. And also these vehicles can help us to reduce local air pollution as well as noise reduction, what is especially important in urban areas. But in addition to these advantages, there are also some disadvantages. They are more expensive in comparison to conventional vehicles. And also for these vehicles, we need to provide additional infrastructure. And this is especially challenging in the case of fuel cells vehicles. And due to these disadvantages, we have worldwide just about 11 million battery electric vehicles and only about 51,000 fuel cells vehicles. And most of these fuel cells vehicles are concentrated actually in just few regions: Korea, United States, China, Japan, and just 3% of this total stock is in Germany. But in all other countries, we have just fuel cells vehicles which are used in the scope of different pilot and demonstration projects. In opposite to fuel cells vehicles, battery electric vehicles are already in use in many countries. And here you can see the increase of battery electric car stock over the last decade. This increase is mostly driven by supporting policy measures. In 2021, we have the largest sale of electric cars in Europe. Here you can see the share of electric cars in the total vehicle sale. And as Europe was in the top in 2021, but here we can notice significant differences across European countries. The highest percentage of electric vehicles in total vehicle sale was in Norway, but in the most of European countries, in the EU countries, this share is below 20%. Here, what we can notice is a clear correlation between GDP and electric vehicle sales. In 2020, about 73% of all electric vehicles sold was sold just in 4 European countries, countries with the highest GDP. So it can be noticed in the countries with highest GDP, the share of electric vehicles in total vehicle sale is higher than 15%. And in the countries with a lower GDP, the share of electric vehicles is below 3%. Similar situation we have also in the case of charging infrastructure. For example, 50% of all the charging points in the EU are just in 2 European countries, Netherlands and Germany. And these two countries in total make up less than 10% of the entire EU surface area. So we have here pretty disbalance in infrastructure of battery electric vehicles. The reason that we have relatively low number of fuel cells vehicles and battery electric vehicles are also cost. Here we can clearly notice that the cost of mobility with fuel cells vehicles and battery electric vehicles are much higher than those of conventional cars. And the major reason for this high cost are high investment costs for vehicles. But the good news is that we have already decreased of this cost. For example, here you can see that in 2010, we have had huge difference between the price of fuel cells vehicles, battery electric vehicles, and conventional cars. Nowadays, we are already here. This price difference is much lower. And in the future, through technological learning, we can account that all these technologies will become more competitive with each other. And here you can also see development of the battery prices, and this rapid reduction of the battery prices is also increasing acceptance of battery electric vehicles. In addition to this, what we can notice is that the number of electric vehicle models is rapidly increasing. 5 years ago, we have had just about 50 different electric vehicle models on market, and nowadays we have more than 300. So nowadays the electric vehicle models are available in all vehicle segments: small cars, medium, crossovers, large, as well as SUVs. And when we are looking at the 3 most important regions for the use of battery electric vehicles, China, EU, and US, we can notice that the most of these available models are in category large and SUVs. In China, 57%, in the EU, 64%, and in the US, even 75%. Larger cars mean that we need also large amount of materials for their production. They have larger battery inside. And the batteries that we are using nowadays are lithium-ion batteries. So for these batteries, we need lithium, which is not available in all countries, in all the regions. The largest amount of this lithium is available in South America, Australia, and China. And actually in Europe and United States, we have a huge import dependency on this region. But what is important here to recognize is that lithium mining is also a source of pollution and can have significant negative environmental impact. So here, especially for the lithium production, we need a large amount of water, and this can lead to different problems, such as competition for the water use with the local communities, as well as groundwater depletion and pollution. In addition to lithium, there are also other materials that we need. For example, cobalt. Nearly 50% of the world cobalt reserves are in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And according to the UNICEF, about 20% of cobalt supply from Congo comes from artisanal mines, where up to 40,000 children work in extremely dangerous conditions. So what is important for the future is to find ways to reduce the need for mining of these raw materials and also to develop appropriate recycling methods for lithium-ion batteries. So basically, battery electric vehicles and fuel cell vehicles are presented as a clean technology, as a zero-emission technology, but it's important to recognize that these vehicles have zero emission just at the point of use. The total emissions are also very dependent on how we are producing electricity, which is used in battery electric vehicles, and how we are producing hydrogen, which is used in fuel cells vehicles. Basically, if we are using renewable energy sources for electricity and hydrogen production, then battery electric vehicles and fuel cells vehicles could provide significant reduction of emissions per kilometer driven. However, which kind of electricity we will use in our cars is very dependent on the mix of the primary energy sources that we have in our country. And here you can see that in Europe we have very different portfolio of primary energy sources that we are using. Depending to which extent we are using fossil energy, to which extent we are using renewable energy, the carbon intensity of electricity generation is very different across European countries, as you can see here. But the good news is that in the EU, we have goal to increase the share of renewable energy in electricity generation mix. So basically what we can notice that over time, in average, we have decreasing use of coal and increasing use of wind and solar energy, and making electricity more green. We are also making electric vehicles more environmentally friendly. But one important problem is here that we, in the most of the regions, we have car-oriented mobility. The number of vehicles is continuously increasing, leading to different problems, but also one problem is congestion. To solve this problem, we are investing in more roads, and in the short term, this could be a solution, but in the long term, this leads to more cars and more infrastructure, more road cars, more congestion. So we have one cycle, and as a result of such cycle, we have situation like this. A huge infrastructure with a lot of very powerful vehicles on it, large cars, SUVs. And if we replace all these cars with battery electric vehicles and fuel cells vehicles, we will still have the same problem. So what we need for the future is to apply a avoid shift improve strategy. Avoid means we need to avoid necessary travel and reduce trip distances. We need also to have possibility to shift to more environmentally friendly transport modes, to have good public transport, as well as possibility for safe walking and cycling. And it's also important to improve transport practices and technologies. So at the end, what we can conclude is that zero emission vehicles are a part of solution. There are still some challenges, such as actually the cost reduction, improvement of battery characteristics, as well as development of necessary infrastructure. Mining of the materials which are used in battery pose risk for the environment, and there is a need to find ways to reduce the use of critical materials in battery. In the future, we will also need a new policy design, and this new policy design should ensure that we have full environmental benefits of these vehicles, and full environmental benefits we have only in relation with renewable energy sources. European Parliament is also working on new rules to tackle environmental, but also ethical and social issues related to battery. And finally, it's very important to recognize that in the future, we will always also need a new mobility behavior. Thank you very much for attention.
Thanks very much, Amela, for this comprehensive introduction to the world of electric vehicles and showing benefits, but also costs. I guess you are showing relevant policy implications also in terms of how to improve the process of development of electric vehicles and how to, let's say, maximize the benefit from their deployment. Thanks a lot. We keep going, I guess, on the same path with Leonardo Artico. Leonardo is currently at Motus-E, and I leave the floor to you if you want to share the screen. You are still muted, Leonardo. And thanks a lot for being with us.
Hello, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now hear you perfectly.
Okay, thanks
a lot.
I'm really sorry I don't have a presentation because I've been involved just 2 days ago and I didn't even know that it was in English. So unfortunately,
I think it's perfect because some presentation, some without presentation. It's a blended blended mode.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, yes, thank you for the invitation. I'm Leonardo Artico and I work for Motus-E. Motus-E is basically a no-profit association based in Rome. Our main goal is just to gather all the companies that are involved in the electric mobility in Italy, because our focus is the Italian market. And our idea, it was from the beginning, because we created this association in 2018 to be quite a different association, because we are not vertical, we are in a certain way more horizontal, because we would like to include all the stakeholders. So just to give you an idea, obviously we have associate like the car maker like Tesla, Renault, Volvo, Volkswagen. Clearly, these are companies that also produce electric vehicles. Then we have also the charging point operators. We have in Italy a lot. One of the most famous is NLX. We have also B-Charge and so on. But we also include in our association all other companies that are involved in a certain way, both in the construction of charging station, because it is something not well known, but in Italy we have a great expertise on the charging station, both of AC and DC. So they are the high power one. We have really big companies, and ABB, the big giant industry, it's one of our associates that right now in Tuscany started a new industry, a new plant to produce this charging station. And just to give you an idea, in Italy, more or less of more than 50% of the charging stations that are installed in Italy are produced also in Italy. And we also export it in other countries of Europe. And this is quite funny, because it's obviously clearly that from talking about cars, Italy is not one of the biggest market. If you are talking about electric vehicle, obviously there is quite a big distance between Italy and Germany. Just to give you an idea, to have a comparison, the amount of electric vehicles sold in Germany in past months more or less is equal of the electric vehicle sold in Italy in all this year. So we are still quite distant to create a great market for this kind of vehicle. But this is the idea. So we include all these stakeholders, because we believe that electric vehicle is for sure the best solution, without doubt, for the cities to move in short distances, because most of the people in Italy does not travel very big distances every day. Obviously, this is an average. I mean, if we consider the average distance of an Italian driver, it's way lower than one of a German driver. So that means that an electric vehicle could be let's say enough for most of the driver. Obviously, there is the clear topic of the cost that, I mean, it's quite obvious that right now there is a gap of cost, but again, I think that we need to consider what kind of car are we talking about, because as every new technology in the beginning, there is the high level. I mean, I remember also when there were the CD player, the first CD player were very expensive. And so only the real person really into hi-fi, high fidelity, bought at that time a CD player, because this is how technology works. Then little by little, the technology evolves and on the market arrives more economic ones, let's say. So, and then at the end of the life cycle, you could buy a portable CD player for almost nothing. And right now it's similar for electric car, because if you want a big car, let's say something like over 50,000 euro, like a sedan, and if you go and compare a Mercedes, a BMW, an Audi with a Tesla, you would not find a big gap in the cost of acquisition. Obviously, there are other kind of discussion to make that, but if we are just talking about the cost of go in the shop, let's say, and buy the car, it's not so huge. There is, on the other way, a big difference with the smaller car. I mean, it's quite obvious if you want to compare Fiat 500 that runs with petrol with a Fiat 500, an electric one, there is a big differences. And okay, this is clear, but again, this is due to the fact that this is, let's say, a common technology process when there is a new technology put on the market. So this is, we need to wait, and lots of countries are starting to reduce also the incentive. And this is right, because as soon as you reach a certain percentage of the market, you don't need to keep on incentivize this kind of asset. Clearly, here in Italy, there is something that it's quite strange, because we tend to incentivize with a very short time period, and this is not good for the market, because in other countries they issue let's say an incentive for 3 years, and this gives stability. Here in Italy, we tend to give incentive from 1 year, then the incentive stop, let's say in December, then in January nothing, February someone from the government says, listen guys, we are going to issue a new incentive. So in January no one bought a car because everyone is waiting. On February they receive this message that a new incentive is going to happen sooner or later, and again in February the market stops again because everyone is still waiting for this incentive. Then if there is 1 month, 2 months between the declaration and the put in place, the effective put in place of the incentive, the market meanwhile is freeze. This is and this is quite strange. Another strange thing on the incentives that on one end we incentivize to put this charger in the highways, the high power chargers on the highways. But on the other hand, we reduce the cap of the amount of the value of the car that can be incentivized. So there is kind of, let's say, disalignment. Okay, you incentivize to put a high power charger, but at the same way, you incentivize only to buy car that cannot be charged on the high power. So it's quite strange. The speaker before me talked about infrastructure. Just again to say something that maybe is not very known. In Italy, the infrastructure, it's an issue of geography, let's say. If you compare the amount of the car with the amount of the public charging station overall, we are not very bad. The percentage is good. The problem is that are not well distributed on our countries. It's not a problem of number of infrastructure charges that, unfortunately, since the amount of car is little, could be also enough, but most of these chargers are in the north of Italy. And a big issue is that still now we cannot find a way to issue a tender to put these high power charges in the highways. And this is something that is really a problem, because obviously if you want to drive from Rome to Milan, you need to be sure to have the possibility to charge your electric car. Otherwise, electric cars remains only limited to the urban utilization. And this is not good. While in France, they put a lot of this charge on the highways. And so in a certain way, you say that you can go from one place to another, also quite distance. In Italy, this is the problem. So we have enough charging point, not well distributed. We need also to incentivize to put our charging station in all the house that are available to put this, because I live in Rome there, and honestly, I only have an electric scooter. I don't have an electric car, because I understand that it's not something very, very easy to use. You need to find the charging station, you need to charge it, and obviously you need to run a certain amount of kilometers during the year. Otherwise, right now, if you want to buy a little car, it could be expensive. But honestly, again, we think that from a technical point of view, the efficiency of the motor is clearly higher than any other alternatives. And in Germany, they are selling a lots of cars, and we have a lots of industry in Italy that are working for the German producer. In Italy, all our ecosystem, industrial ecosystem that provides parts for the automotive sector, export more than 60% to Germany and to France. So again, apart from the number of the electric cars that right now are sold in Italy, there are lots of industry that are starting to work for these companies that produce cars in Germany, in France. And also Stellantis declared that in Melfi there will be 4 or 5 electric vehicles in the next year. So, I mean, it's quite a complex situation. We try to, we as Motus-E, to give an honest idea of the actual state of things. And we really think that this could be a good alternative, starting from little distance. And obviously there will be, it will be not from one day to another, everyone will be electric. Clearly, 2035, they said no more car will be sold with combustion engine, but there will be still almost 80% in Italy of car running with petrol and diesel. So maybe other kind of alternatives different from electricity could be used to use for ship, for airplane. I mean, there are obviously some kinds of transportation vehicle that are more difficult to electrify compared to cars. And so I think that we need to focus our effort in studying other kinds of electric alternatives at first to put in this kind of vehicle. And then we will see in the future. So to use the best alternatives, the best way to diversify, let's say. This is our idea. And I think that I took more time than it was assigned to me, but...
no, you were perfect.
Okay, that's all. Thank
right
you very
on
much.
the...
Sorry again not to have a presentation that could have made things more clear and more easy to follow, but... Maybe
no, I thank you. I really think it was extremely clear. I mean, you emphasized many challenges facing the electric vehicles, and I guess in particular the need to coordinate policies in an integrated way. I mean, let alone coordination of different policies, you know, industrial, energy, environment, but, you know, even within the specific policy, it would be enough to have coordination at a smaller level to just generate an improvement. So thanks very much, Leonardo, for this. For your talk. Now I'll leave the floor to Franco del Manso. Franco del Manso is currently the International Environmental Affairs Manager of UNEM, the Union of Energy for the Mobility. I presume Franco will focus on the role that other fuels, that conventional fuels, biofuels may have in reaching the environmental goals that are expected for the future. Thanks a lot, Franco del Manso, for being with us today, and I leave you the floor.
Thank you, Rosa, and good afternoon, everyone. You are correct. I will try to explain the way we think to reach the decarbonization of transport, not only with the electrification, but also with many other solutions. So in my presentation, we start saying that we fully agree with the EU climate ambition to reach the carbon neutrality to 2050. But we immediately say that this ambition needs to be carefully linked with the security of energy supply, and also to take into account the social and economic aspect of the transition. We have seen in this period, in these last months, that the messages released during the last years, which have stopped any new investment in oil and gas sector, has created the very, very strong crisis of energy that we are facing now. And the war with Russia and Ukraine just increased the crisis, but the crisis is established well before the war. And the main reason is the wrong narrative that has been addressed during this period to phase out the traditional energies without have any yet full available alternatives. And so we are facing now the energy supplies crisis. Regarding that, oil and gas, in a way or in another, need to be used for several decades in this situation. Then we will see if some breakthrough that we have just heard can modify the situation, but otherwise this is the aspect. And these aspects are perfectly linked with the transport, where the wrong narrative of European Commission is only electrification is the solution. But we are station, not electrification. And the Commission proposal and normative on CO2 car limits that will establish the zero emission in 2035 only in the tailpipe of cars is the result of this narrative. But do we really decarbonize the transport sector by limiting the tailpipe CO2 emission only? This is the question. And Amela just a few minutes ago demonstrated that the answer is no. We do not decarbonize if we limit the CO2 emission only to the tailpipe. Even if this legislation disregard completely the contribution that other sector can give, and Mariarosa Baroni already said the big contribution that the gaseous biofuels can give, and in our sector, the low carbon liquid fuel also can give. And so we need to revise this legislation in order to implement the solution that can give a real contribution to the decarbonization of the transport. In particular, our proposal is to use not disregarding the electrification, but to complement the electrification with the low carbon liquid fuels. Only in this way we can give a contribution also for the vast amount of current fleet that continue to use fossil fuel in order to reduce the CO2 also in this area. And our policy is to develop in the short terms the biofuels in particular, and in the long term the synthetic fuels with the advanced biofuels can be a good contribution. But why we need this low carbon fuel to decarbonize the sector? Because, as been said already, in Europe we have 300 million of passenger cars. 99% is fueled with fossil fuel, and they have a combustion engine. So how many years does we take to change all these cars with the electric vehicles? It up to 20, 30 years. And this will happen. Okay, we have already seen that the battery electric vehicles are developed only in the very rich countries. In the eastern part of Europe, the battery electric vehicles are near zero in the car fleets. And also the reduction of the cost of the battery electric vehicles is questionable, because okay, we have seen some reduction during the last year, but now no more. During these last months, the price of batteries has increased instead of to decrease. And this is also the reason that to implement this kind of vehicles, only big incentives can give a contribution. Big incentive in every sector. Big incentive for the cars. Big incentive for the infrastructure charging and so on. But okay, we do need to live also with the business plan without incentive. But anyway, this is the situation of that the European legislation is creating, and is producing also other effects, like okay, expanding the used car market instead of new cars. So the average age of the fleet is growing, and we are facing in some countries the Cooper effect on car fleets. The CO2 in this way do not be reduced, because we cannot develop the low carbon fuel if we are obliged not to use these fuels. And also maritime and aviation have an effect. Also the European automotive competitiveness need to be evaluated with big attention versus China. Our solution with low carbon fuels, liquid and gaseous, are explained in the very clear in this way. They can reduce immediately the greenhouse gases of all the fleets in every sector, road transportation, heavy duty, maritime and aviation. These fuels, in particular the synthetic fuel, can accumulate large quantity of non-programmable renewable electricity, so ensuring also a stability of the grid without a big other investment. Then they are totally compatible with the traditional liquid, and so allowing the same identical logistic and distribution infrastructure. We can use the same depots, we can use the same service station, the same way to move these fuels without any adaptations. And then if we are able to develop this fuel for road transportation, and so we reach a scale dimension in a way that we can really industrialize this fuel, we can also fuel the maritime and the aviation that otherwise we are not possible to develop, and so all this sector will continue to use fossil fuels. This is the evolution of our proposal, starting with the biofuel in the first years and reach with the total liquid and gaseous fuels at 2050 with neutral carbon fuel, near half advanced biofuels, near half synthetic fuels, with over 600 billion of investment and up to 150 million tons of this product available. This will also enable the refining industry to develop the activities and to remain central in this transition. Because in this way we will can abate all the CO2 in the process and in the products by using a different raw material, starting from biomass, but using also waste or captured CO2 or clean hydrogen instead of oil. And this is perfectly possible with the technologies that we have already developed, and we need only to industrialize it. But this industrialization can be done only if the market situation and the legislative framework in particular available us to make this development. So to conclude, we can give a good and very high contribution to the decarbonization of transport, but these possibilities can be developed only if the legislation will change. The current legislation based only on the approach thanks to will do not allow us to make an investment, because it's impossible to plan a very big investment if we are not able to use this fuel for the period after 2035. Moreover, the tank-to-wheel approach is a wrong approach because do not reach any decarbonization. If you don't eliminate the CO2 emitted before the wheel, you do not reach any decarbonization. So it is totally wrong to name zero emission vehicles vehicles that is fueled by electricity produced not in the renewable way. But the legislation is this one, and the car manufacturers are obliged to invest in these activities, and unfortunately, they have a very big investment on battery electric vehicles, even if the market do not respond in the way they are expected. So to conclude, we again says that a car fueled with carbon neutral fuels can be named zero emission vehicles, and this is the only way to reach the decarbonization of the road transport, and is a way also to make available fuel for other sector not electrified, like maritime and aviation. So this is our plan, this is our proposal. We are continuing to insist in order to try to modify the legislation, and if the situation remains in this way, okay, we realize that the Commission and the European political part want to go in this way, even if, in our opinion, is a wrong way. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Franco del Manso, for this very interesting presentation. I guess you emphasized a lot of aspects. I think the need for a sort of comprehensive cost to benefit analysis in terms of emission, not only on the downstream side, but considering the entire process, as well as the sort of technological neutrality that could be an aspect, or should be an aspect of this ecological transition that we sometimes do not adequately consider. I now leave the floor to Sandro Neri, whom I thank a lot for being with us today. Franco Neri is at Federmanager. He is the director of Federmanager Rome, and Federmanager has traditionally had a particular involvement with the energy sector, and a particular involvement with our association. And Sandro has coordinated several studies joined with the Association for Energy Economists. So thanks a lot, and I'll leave the floor. You are muted.
Okay.
Perfect.
And how to share the view? Let me see.
There is the button share screen, the green one, in mezzo sotto.
Yes, but how? Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Allora. How to move this? Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to give you a short presentation on behalf of Federmanager regarding the current situation of sustainable mobility challenges for the transition targets and the future strategies of the energy industry in Italy. Before going on details, into the details, let me give you a brief overview of Federmanager. Federmanager is a key association representing managers who lead companies that produce goods and services. We have been active since 1945, and we focus on multiple aspects such as contractual, institutional, social, professional, and cultural. Federmanager has a central national structure as well as a local presence with 55 structures spread across Italy. For several years, Federmanager has established a social scientific relationship with the AIEE, drawing up 4 reports on contemporary energy topics, such as energy security and efficiency, decarbonization, circular economy, energy communities, and the last but not least, automotive and smart mobility. The latter will be presented yearly next year with a dedicated conference with politicians, managers, energy companies, and so on. Our long-term goal is to increase synergies between energy communities, prosumers, and electric mobility, and to become the main interlocutors of politicians and stakeholders, both in Italy and in Europe. From 2021, Federmanager and AIEE have in place a new collaboration by drawing up a monthly energy observatory based on fundamental Italian energy topics. Now, we will go into the details of the presentation, which will be divided into 3 parts. The first one is the structural response to the current energy. The 3 parts are the list of contents. The 3 parts are the revolution in the automotive world, the effects on the Italian industrial system, and the last one is a strategy to minimize the economic and social impact, the role of companies with management. The structural response to the current energy crisis and the increase of gas prices implies and accelerates the growth in renewable energy generation, setting electricity prices through auctions and long-term contracts. The resulting reduced price volatility of the energy supplied to electric cars cannot occur for cars powered by fossil fuels, increasing the benefits of the electric cars. The energy consumption of electric cars is about 1/3 of the internal combustion engine one, resulting in further economic and environmental benefits. The revolution in the automotive world seems that electrical cars will bring a revolution in the way we use the car. New models of mobility. We have and autonomous driving, digitalization, electrification. Ownership will lose relevance in favor of mobility services and journey sharing. Many jobs will be lost. Around 275,000 in Europe net of the 230,000 created for the current transition. because the electric car uses fewer components for its construction than the traditional car, equal to around 1/6, 2,000 components against 120 and 2,000. And the machinery that will produce the electrical components of the cars will have a longer useful life. Therefore, investment will decrease by 25%. We can see here the main components of an electric cars and of the actual car. The main component, we have already said that of the electric car is the battery. And the new materials will mainly concern, obviously, the battery pack, which will be innovative, and before the end of the decade, the batteries will be solid state with significantly faster recharging times and a lower demand for the lithium. We can see the main steps for this revolution in batteries. But let me say something about the effects on the Italian industrial sector of this revolution. The technological and managerial transformation induced by the production of the electric car will have a strong impact on the Italian automotive industry. The Italian automotive industry, made up of about 60% of small and even micro companies, this is the problem of Italy, where the models of governance are more or less 50% of the family type. Recalls to foreign managers represent only 6% of independent companies, but more or less 80% in the case of foreign multinational and 30% in the case of an Italian group, where the mixed management system predominates, 50%, more or less. The creation of Stellantis with the merger of FCA with PSA has remedied the innovation gap that FCA had in relation to the electric car and has allowed FCA production to enter to the Asian markets where PSA was present, to make the latter available the North American and Brazilian market where FCA was present. The fourth global car player after Volkswagen, Toyota, and Renault Nissan was born. The consequence of the new alliance will be the conversion of the Melfi and Termoli plants to the production of electrical cars. But we have to analyze the weaknesses of this electric Italian industrial sector. Italy lags behind Europe in recharging. We already discussed about this by Artico. With electric columns, while China is the leader for faster recharges in percentage terms compared to traditional ones. In Italy, we have shortage for electric motors, power modules, vehicle digitalization, sensors, battery packs, and computerization, where the level of preparation is low, or in any case below the international average. Many small or medium-sized companies have not yet made the transition to electric mobility. New skills are needed, especially for digitalization. allow propensity of Italian companies to innovate emerges. Italy is the country in Europe that risks losing the largest number of employees in the component sector, around 60,000 employees. We have also some strengths and challenges by this situation, let me say. Italy is behind in the transition to electric mobility, but this could be an advantage because we could adopt the best practice experience elsewhere. Particular attention should be paid to the transformation of the German market, which accounts for approximately 20% of export from automotive industries. Artico said this. In Italy, ample space must be given to the battery industry. With the construction of big factories for the production, regeneration, repair, and recycle of the same. For example, the case of Renova, which tests and homologates batteries in Soliera, in the north of Italy. In Italy, the 275,000 jobs in the component sector must be converted. And the first closures are already taking place today, such as Bosch in Bari, 1,400 employees, Marelli in Bari, more or less 600 employees, in Chieti, 1,000 employees. This is a disaster for employees and for the Italian industrial sector criticizes the acceleration given to decarbonization in the automotive sector, with a stop to the registrations of endothermic cars from 2035. But the proposal to slow it down increases the risk of job losses.
I'm sorry to interrupt. They say that we should close in 3 minutes, so I think we should perhaps wrap up if possible.
Yes, we have only three slides.
Yeah, no, well, yeah.
Okay, if you want, I can stop here. If
you could conclude, perhaps it would be great if
only
possible.
To be concluded. For Italy, we have too fast and automatic public funding mechanism. We have to increase tax advantages for investors in sustainable mobility, and so on. We have also an introduction of tax instrument to facilitate business combination and growth in size of companies. We have already said that we have small companies, to large of small companies, and we propose themselves as an aggregation poles, creating joint venture to operate in Italy or abroad. We have to acquire control of innovative startups capable of involving them in highly innovative projects connected to disruptive technologies. We have to convert jobs in the component sector, training personnel adequately in order to guarantee the new necessary skills, especially in field of digitalization. And we have also to increase the percentage of investment in training 4.0, innovation, research, and development. So this is all for my presentation. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you really much for this. I mean, it's really a plan of action for the ecological transition, which I really think is should really be could be followed in the future. Now, I think we have only a couple of minutes. I don't know if I can still put my presentation on. It says my slides are disabled, so perhaps it's a sign of destiny that we are a bit late. So I'll let me see if we can do it. No, now I can. Now I seem to be able to do it. Let's see if I can just quickly. I just give you a very quick glimpse of what we do, and then I'll so we are studying basically congestion in the with driverless cars, and the idea is that driverless cars, automated self-driving vehicles will entail not only technological, legal, and moral issues that have been nicely described in many of the previous talks, but also strictly economic issues. And one of those will be related to the fleetization, to the process of transition towards fleet that has been described by Sandro Neri in his presentation just now. And this process will perhaps lead to the emergence of particular fleets that are fleets of robotaxis. So in this study that we do, I am at the University of Bolzano. I am an energy economist and a transport economist, and I am doing this study with a colleague of mine, Alessandro Fedele, and with Alberto Iozzi, who is at the University of Tor Vergata. What we actually study is the effect of centralization of urban traffic. What do we mean centralization? We mean that urban traffic is going to be increasingly managed by fleets of vehicles, which will be comparatively more profitable than private cars, because when such vehicles will be driven by a software and no longer driven by a human, it will be much cheaper to run a fleet, and the fleet will also have all the advantages in terms of utilization that has now, but now, you know, until the fleets require a driver, there will be an additional cost, which is due to the fact that the driver has to be paid. We study in particular what we call congestion externality. Congestion externality is due to the fact that when you drive a car and you stay in line, okay, you of course are bothered by the line. You pay the cost of, you know, wasting time because you are in a line, but you do not consider that if you decide to drive in a congested road, you will generate a cost for all the others that are behind you, okay? And this cost is an externality because, you know, you don't pay this cost, but you generate it for the other drivers. And whereas when traffic will be organized in fleets, this cost is likely to change, is no longer an externality, because the fleet operator realizes that, you know, if he dispatches one more vehicle, then those that will leave later will be harmed by the fact that this vehicle is on the road, because there will be more congestion, and, you know, there is a high probability that those who leave later belong to the same fleet. So basically the fleet operator will see his profit reduced by congestion. And this may change the dynamics of the congestion externality, and this may change the dynamics of urban traffic. And so what we study in this paper and in general in this research project is how the market structure of the fleets market will determine the welfare effects, the effects on welfare of the transition to fleets that will be triggered by the transition to autonomous vehicles, okay? In a separate part of the project, we also study the social effects, or we are trying currently to estimate, the social effects of this transition to fleets of autonomous vehicles. These social effects will, of course, be very large because, many people, there will need to be a transition in terms of jobs. Many people will lose their jobs. I will not go through the details of our finding because we are really well out of time. But if somebody is interested, I am happy to, of course, to share the papers and also to discuss to discuss the results that we obtained. So I thank a lot everybody for bearing with us for this session, and I thank all the speakers that made, to me at least, this session extremely interesting. And I don't think we have any room for any questions anymore because we are over time. But again, thanks a lot, everybody, and sorry for being so quick. I hope the main message of my presentation has been at least clear.
Thank you too.
Thanks a lot. I think we have no time, Mariarosa. Oh well, I
just wanted to ask a question, especially to Mr. Neri. He is talking about the world. I would like to understand if he considered the world just Europe, or what he's going to do in Africa, for example, when he talks that everybody will be car sharing, will be electrical. I'm working in Africa, and I know that for, I don't say a century, but almost like that, they have no energy and they will not have electrical car, and for sure they don't know what you say about car sharing. So when you talk about, don't say the world, say part of the world.
I think the debate would be very interesting. We have to close because we have a session that is coming out.
Africa is a part of the continent.
It's not
a part.
Thank you.
Thanks for the comment, and we close. Bye-bye. Thank you.